We've all been there. You and your opponent are both on last stock, and it's a tense situation. You get sent off stage without a double jump, and you decide to go low because you're marked. Like, what are you going to do? You see the enemy Link get his bomb, and you get ready to attack the explosion like you've done so many times before, only this time. Situations like this happen all the time, where Ultimate's buffer system screws you over and you either end up plummeting or flying to your own demise. There is a way to solve this issue though, something that prevents a Link main like me from gimping you into next week. Hi and welcome back to Smash Ultimate Basics, where while selecting min-min is in fact an option,
that's quite big.
Unless you hate fun, it's probably not a good one. Today we'll be doing a deep dive into both option selecting and the buffer system in general, going over buffer priority and frame data, how to force a buffered option selecting and how it works, and some useful option selects you can use. I will admit that I had to do a lot of research to prepare for this video since I wasn't too familiar with option selects before making this guide. As such, I'll include all the sources I used in the description and tell you where I used them. If there's anything you feel that I missed or needs correcting, sound off in the comments and I'll heart and maybe pin all the ones I find helpful. Finally, this video covers some pretty complex stuff, so if you don't quite understand frame data, teching, or edge guards, I'll leave resources for you in the description to watch first. Without further ado, let's get right into it. I explained a little bit of this in my combo basics guide, but just as a recap, buffering is when you input an action before it can be performed and it happens on the next frame it can. To do it successfully, you can either hit buffer by pressing the input 9 or 11 frames before your previous action ends, or hold buffer by holding the action until it can be performed. Barring a few exceptions, you can't buffer moves with multiple inputs on the same frame. If you do that though, if you buffer multiple inputs before your next actionable frame, then the game has to decide which to use and which to ignore. You can't just air dodge and do a falling neutral air at the same time, or this game would be fundamentally broken. I mean, it already is, but that's beside the point. Anyway, so the game has to decide what button gets registered, but how does it do that? Buffer priority. Buffer priority is the system that chooses which inputs are accepted and which are ignored when you hit them. With buffer priority, it doesn't matter if you hold jump during a Falcon Punch and 30 frames later hold shield. Shield will always out-prioritize your jump. This is because the buffer priority is hierarchical, meaning that regardless of the time you buffer certain moves, some of them will be out-prioritized simply because one of them is higher up on the priority list. If you continue holding the move that was out-prioritized, with a few exceptions, it'll be completely cancelled like you never pressed it. Here's the hierarchy for buffering priority, in order from most to least prioritized. When grounded, the priority is fusion, which I'll explain later, item throws, dodges, grabs, your shield, specials, attacks, jumps, taunts, dashing, and turning. When airborne, it's specials, item throws, Z-drops, Zairs, your air dodge, aerials, double jumps, and fusion. Fusion in this case is any time an attack or item throw is buffered with a jump at the same time. If you recall, buffered short hop aerials from my last guide are an example of this, but it can extend beyond that as well. Grounded Z-drops, item throws, and all the aerial versions of those are all examples of fusion. This buffer system explains a lot, like for example why sometimes when doing a turnaround jab, you tilt instead. Because attack is prioritized over turning, you can't buffer attack before you turn or it'll be out prioritized. It's situations like that where knowing this buffer system will help, but there's also a few exceptions to this buffer system that for the sake of time I unfortunately can't cover here.
Wait. For the sake of time? For the sake of time? My Jesus Christ! How much time do you need? In all seriousness, I don't fully understand all the exceptions, and I was fairly confused on them. So I'll still include all of my resources, but yeah.
There's also a few more circumstances where buffer priority takes place as well. When you're on the ledge, the priority is get up jump, attack, roll, normal get up, and ledge drop. Okay, wait, let's slow down for a minute here. I'll admit, that's a lot of information, and I don't expect myself or anyone else to remember most of that when adding to my Only Nairs content. So why exactly did I spend the last 3.5 minutes explaining it?
It's because I'm a nerd and love hearing myself talk. That's the real reason. But actually, yeah, I'll let past me play.
Well, if you're going to understand buffer traps and option selects, you first got to know all of this or it won't make sense as to how it works. And anyway, it means I have to explain a lot less as we go. Speaking of which, I'm going to cover buffer traps first before showing you a way to prevent them with option selecting, so here it is. If you've ever tried to approach your opponent but gotten hit into a mistech and accidentally rolled forward instead, you've technically been buffer trapped. A buffer trap is where you force your opponent to buffer an option that they didn't want. Although buffer traps like the one I showed technically aren't true, if you reacted fast enough you could flick your stick back or up to do another option instead, there is at least one case I know of that's a mostly true buffer trap. And that's this. Let's break this down. You've probably seen our Resident Hero main or I tech the stage if you try and hit us into it, and at a higher level than either of us, that's quite literally almost never gonna work. The main problem with that is that if you fall off to do your back air or other aerials, you give up your stage position to your opponent, allowing them to ledge trap you. That's where this tech comes in. I don't believe this one has a name, so I'll call it RAEL, or Rising Aerial Edgeguard Ledge Trap. Basically, if you time your aerial but double jump in as you do it, you can attempt a stage spike without giving up your stage position, allowing you to ledge trap instead of your opponent. But that's not all to this tech. If you time it so you throw out the aerial right when they're about to grab the ledge, then whether they're iframes or tangible frames, kick in or not, they have to tech or it could mean they're stock.
Oh no!
If they do get the iframes out in time and don't get hit by the stage spike, then because of Ultimate's crappy buffer system, it'll force them to roll, meaning that the easiest option to cover in a ledge trap situation is all you need to do.
A couple disclaimers from future Peyton. Okay, so firstly, RAEL can work with aerials other than back air, depending on the character, obviously. And depending on your down air, a T-spike attempt could easily turn into a RAEL situation pretty fast. Also, RAEL works by far the best when your opponent is hugging the stage, preferably without a large hitbox behind them while they recover. If they're out by even a little bit, then Lucina is going to be slicing clouds rather than people. And finally, your character needs to either be floaty enough, have a high enough double jump, or some combination of both to make it back to the stage. Sorry, Ganon mains. Alright, back to the me that had leg hair. Ew.
For both this tech and the option select I'll cover in a bit, I got them from Game 5 Smash and his video on it. If you want more info, I'll leave a link in the description so you can go watch his stuff. While RAEL is a pretty powerful buffer trap, there is a way to fight against it, some way you can buffer jump or get up attack instead of just rolling. I didn't clickbait you with the title, it's just that we had a lot of stuff we needed to go over before finally explaining. Option selecting is where you press multiple buttons at the same time to automatically select between the two actions. Most of the time, option selects in this game are directly dependent on the game state your character is sent into. There are a few more beyond this, but the ones relevant to this guide are grounded, airborne, tumble, and hit stun. Beyond the obvious, tumble, if you recall from my last guide, is the game state where you're hit hard enough that you can't fast fall, but you can tech. Hit stun is the game state where you're unable to act other than teching, and when in hit stun you can be in any other of the three states as well. When option selecting, you take advantage of these different states to do something different depending on what your opponent sends you into. Let me give an example. Remember RAEL? When it's done on you and they miss the stage spike, you're forced to roll into their up smash, but if you use option selecting, you'll get by scot-free. If you didn't skip the admittedly boring buffer system section, you'll see that both get up attack and get up jump are prioritized over your roll. And so, if you see your opponent trying to go for this tech, you can press both shield and jump or attack at the same time to option select between them. If your opponent hits you, then because hit stun doesn't allow you to do anything else, you tech and can recover from there. If your opponent doesn't hit you, you jump or attack and avoid their roll punish. There's a few other cases where you can avoid being gimped with a sage spike as well. The reason why pro players are so good at teching isn't because they react to each and every individual hit, far from it. What they do instead is that they react to when they think their opponent is about to hit them in. So instead of pressing shield here, they start to here
as they're coming down with the fast fall.
And if they're wrong, it's no problem because they're still caught up in their up B animation, meaning that they won't air dodge for it. I think that's an example of option selecting, since if they miss, you continue the up B, and if they hit, you tech. The real issue comes when you don't know if you're supposed to tech or not.
There is a way to account for both in one button, and that's the thing I showed in the opener.
If you look back to the priority list, you'll see that specials out-prioritize your air dodge, so if you press both at the same time, you can option select between teching the stage and buffering an up B. This way, you'll still tech if you got hit in a tumble, but if they use a weaker move, you'll buffer an up B instead. Okay, so there was an option select I was going to say between A landing and teching, but I had a lot of misconceptions about what A landing is. The gist is that you have some aerials that have auto cancel windows before the move comes out, allowing you to act much faster than teching. I was going to say that you can option select between A landing and teching if you're not sure you'll be out of tumble in time, but the footage I used for that is not A landing technically. Cloud Snare does not auto cancel in startup. It's only 9 frames landing lag, so still a lot faster than teching, but for transparency's sake, when I wrote this section a year ago, I had no idea what I was talking about. Alright, back to my editing dungeon. Yeah, I'm not going to be bothered to do a proper conclusion. The content's there, refer to it when you need. Nothing really necessary will be said beyond this point. So if you want to click off, do it now. I originally wanted to release this a year and a half ago, but I got burned out and I had a ton of life stuff. By the way, when I say resident so-and-so main, I used to make these videos to help out our school's esports team. But now that I no longer go there, I don't really have a reason to keep making these. I haven't really been playing much Smash Ultimate recently. I've been too caught up with playing Cyberpunk and, well, just trying to live in the times we're in. I don't know if I have the motivation to keep making content. That's part of the reason why I sat on this one so long. If I do make another video, it'll probably be a long form or a series going over everything I feel that I poorly explained in my past videos, but I'm not sure if I really want to do that. Tournament locals start up in the fall, so I might play more than college and job permitting. There were going to be more option selects for me to cover, such as the parry option selects, but I found them to be either too niche or just plain inconsistent. As usual though, I'll include those resources in the description if you want to do further research. Huge thanks to my friend that helps with the B-roll clips, those being Marmar and Softboiled. Their links will be in the description as well. I hope this helped you all, and I wish you all the best of luck in your ultimate endeavors.